Okay, hello and welcome. I'm Tom Smyth. I'm presenting today on behalf of Patricia Klambauer and the members of the Web and Social Media Preservation Program, the National Library and Archives Canada. I'm pleased to be here today to talk a little bit about what I've called the black hole of quality control and the conditions under which we've had to develop a framework for managing QC effort to ensure value. Before we go any further, we should define the issue. Why is this a black hole? Our experience in talking to web archiving practitioners across Canada has been that they always find quality control to be a daunting operational issue. It can be a sinkhole, and it's possibly one of the most daunting issues that even a seasoned and an emerging program can experience. How much of your total time is devoted to web archiving is spent doing boring manual quality control? I think is a question that we all should ask. And this can be deeply influenced by how good your crawl definitions are, and also how high the quality level is of the target web resource that you're trying to collect. One of the issues that we've discovered is that we've often attempted to collect badly designed web resources, which has greatly increased quality control times, but we should question whether that's worth it. And if it isn't, or how do you go about managing that? How do you provide guidelines to your curators on what sites to collect in order to limit your quality control effort? Another one, how do you decide when that elevated effort actually is warranted? Because as your level of experience goes up in web archiving, your quality control effort should go down, but does it? We found that ours wasn't. In fact, we were pumping a lot more time into quality control in order to try to create a perfect archive. But really what we needed was a resource management oriented response to manage that quality control effort. So my punchline really is that quality control can take over your life if you let it. So here's your program resources, and here's your quality control accretion disk. And what we're going about today is a methodology for how to constrain this. So some disclaimers first before that affect what follows. Our program has 5 FTE curators and another 3 that work part-time. We do not at this time conduct domain crawls of the Canadian National.ca domain. We do, however, do the federal government domain, .gc.ca comprehensively. Thus, a lot of our work is concentrated on thematic collecting, and we decide what themes and what resources to select individually. We realize this is not ideal. We want all the data if that is possible, but it isn't at the time, and we realize that this is a stopgap. We use Archive.it, and we do not have internal infrastructure. So for this reason, we are doing a lot of manual quality control. In terms of our program acquisition methodology, we conduct 5 main activities. As mentioned, the comprehensive collection of the federal government web presence, which has gone on since the beginning of the program in 2005. Some social media and thematic web collections. We do we call event-based collections and the news media, which is to say national historic issue arises, we immediately reprioritize, we react, and we collect that material documenting that subject. And we do, of course, we collect nominated materials and those that are in need of rescue or preservation harvesting. In terms of our curation and project management methodology, we'll go at the high level, we're of course driven by institutional acquisition priorities that define in a 3-year term what subjects we should be concentrating on, and in turn an acquisition policy framework. So within these confines, which will be identical in any other organization, we choose on a year-long basis, a fiscal basis, what themes we'll be documenting, and then we assign a priority level to each one of those themes. We then generate a project scoping document, which defines what sub-themes within each project we're actually trying to document. What is it that we're trying to record for history? We define their scope in and out, and we also define in a library collection development context depth indicators for each sub-theme, which is to say the level of comprehensiveness we're trying to document that subject. We then assign priority levels to each sub-theme, as mentioned, and we define therefrom a max number of seeds to collect for each subtheme. Curators, FTEs, are then assigned to each subtheme to think about the collecting material in that subject. But we do acknowledge that in the course of resource discovery, we should be evolving our scope, and we do so. So we proceed by selecting and harvesting first, and then we conduct quality control later. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute. Before we go any further, more about effort versus value. If you are looking at a very intensive and maybe badly designed web resource that is going to generate a lot of effort to preserve, we should question we should have a framework for deciding when that effort is warranted. So one way to reduce your overall quality control effort is to look at where your quality control operations are actually concentrated. And often that needs some mitigation. So our value versus effort principles are based on library collection development again. Essentially, what is when the curator is looking at any individual web resource, they should think about what its currency is, its authority, significance, to what degree it's representative versus unique, how it complements the existing holdings, and in that context, its likelihood of consultation and how often it will be looked at in the future and what its research value would be. Contrary to this, the other things to consider: tenability for preservation and emulation and access, and also the degree of effort. So in aligning with the organization's mandate and policy framework and basic principles of digital preservation, material that constitutes an untenable effort or really cannot be feasibly preserved or made accessible really shouldn't be acquired. So in terms of quality control, each one of the curators as a next step would track each seed that they select in a spreadsheet and assign to it a high-level quality control rating according to the details of the following slide. The rating is essentially based on the web resource's design quality, what kind of technologies it utilizes and has embedded, examination of the URL construction, does it point to material that will be problematic for scoping, offsite and cloud servers or whatnot, which will speak to the overall degree of issue with collecting that resource. Project lead would then define, based on project and subtheme priority and resource availability, the maximum QC effort that will be invested in FTE hours, it's measured in hours, per each subtheme of the project. So here's a look at the actual quality control levels. We have 6 of them, ranging from none, no quality control is conducted at all the way up to interacting with the website owner or webmaster to ensure 100% accurate and faithful preservation. So these levels, of course, are very scalable based on your availability of resources and how nitty-gritty you want to get in terms of doing your quality control and your degree of faithfulness to the original. For us, these higher levels, 5 and 6, intensive and advanced, which is to say that we ensure that audio and AV functionality is preserved, or we work with the website owner, those are escalated to more senior resources within the team who are more on the crawl and quality control engineering side of the shop. So as mentioned, we concentrate on seed collection first and conduct especially more advanced quality control at a later time. And we realize that this is a risk, but we prefer to prioritize data collection. Our project teams, when they're in the midst of curation, meet regularly. A project lead will roll up all seed spreadsheets from the curators into a master to assess the total projected quality control that's needed in order to allocate those 2 resources for action. When the project collection phase ends, when acquisition ends, the entire team will then switch from acquisition to quality control, and we enter what we call a blitz. All hands will be on deck to perform quality control, which frees the more senior resources and curators to also work on quality control. We think this model is very scalable and easily adaptable. It permits a high degree of project tracking and assessment of how complex the resources selected were and how high the quality control effort was. This, interestingly, generates a lot of metrics with which you can talk to management about how you do your web archiving work, what kind of expertise is needed, which will give you numbers which will help you argue for additional staff. It also enables dynamic adjustment of quality control work as needed. So if we find that we need to, some national historic event arises that we need to reprioritize and move some resources according to our priorities and quality control levels, we can then, we then have a good idea of what we can let go of, what we can stop doing in order to take on other projects. So we found that this approach helps constrain quality control effort while maintaining expected quality levels, and enables you to channel your FTE resources to more intellectual and less technical work, less boring work. So you can break it down and you can chart it as a pie graph. You can show it as a graph. As you can see here, we actually decided that there was more advanced than there was intermediate quality control work, which is something which may be fine, but is something that we want to look at and adjust. So for the future, we are in the process of converting these project scoping documents into something like a finding aid, which we would publish along with the collection for consultation by potential researchers. Such a document would give an overview of the thematic collection, including the stated goals and curation. It would define the scope in and out, including the output and results of the quality control. It would also list the social media that was collected and in what language all of these resources are. Also, the degree of comprehensiveness will tell the researcher how much data is actually there that they're looking for. And we hope this document overall will answer the question of whether the data is relevant to a researcher's interests before they have to slog through all the data. So this is it in a nutshell. I should say that there are drafts available of both the project management document and the quality control framework. If these are of interest, you can please get in touch with us via these coordinates. Happy to take questions at any time, and thanks for your attention and take care.